Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to America once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that featured on the channel once before. Now, the last review that I did from these guys came a couple of years ago actually, and that was a beer that kind of just randomly released through Systembolaget in Sweden, but it was pretty good and it kind of opened my eye to another niche within a niche of the craft beer market, if you like. But yeah, these guys are definitely most well known for their wild ales, sour beers, whatever you're going to call them, and they're regarded as having been particularly pioneering in the American Pacific Northwest and having developed that American Pacific Northwest sour ale category, if we can call it that. But yeah, I got the news very recently that these guys have unfortunately ceased operations. Whether that's going to be a bit more temporary or more permanent is a little bit up in the air as of the time of filming, but thankfully I came across a bunch of their beers here in Hong Kong. I got a very good deal on them and I thought, you know, let's buy some of these up and review them on the channel while we still can. This was a brewery that I really had in mind to go and visit and film out and about videos at and things like that, and of course to cover with sit-down reviews on the channel over the next little while, so we'll just need to see whether that is still going to be possible in the future. But yeah, big thank you to my good friend Alan for pointing me in the right direction with this brewery. He's a huge sour beer nerd, so his input for these videos going forward is pretty invaluable actually. So yeah, looking forward to reviewing these beers for you over the next little while. But the one that we're going to have a look at today, it should be really interesting. The base beer in this one is a style that I really quite enjoy, and the adjunct that's in this one is one that I really enjoy within the sour beer category as well. So yeah, needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to the US. Like I said, we're going to go to the Pacific Northwest region, the state of Oregon, and the city of Portland, which is a little bit of a beer mecca these days, of course, too. And a big shout out to my good friend Nicole, Tasting Niche as she's known. She does some interesting stuff, so I'll try to remember to put the link to her channels in the video description for you below. But yeah, for this review we are going to go to the southwest part of the city, to the wonderful Cascade Brewing. This particular beer is Sang Royal. It comes in at 9.4% ABV. This is the 2016 vintage, incidentally, because there are many different ones, but this one is an Imperial Red Ale that's been barrel aged along with Oregon Pinot Noir grapes. So yeah, this should be pretty interesting. I picked up this beer at Carbon Brews in Central here in Hong Kong. They had a whole bunch of Cascade stuff and they did me a very good deal to buy 4 of these beers, and you'll be seeing these appearing on the channel over the next little while. So yeah, big thank you to the guys at Carbon for making these reviews possible as well. And I just saw a bunch of Cascade stuff and I thought, yeah, let's see if we can buy some of this up and review them for you. So yeah, good times ahead. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what it's going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Cascade Brewing before, and like I say, we will add a few more to that list over the next wee while, and hopefully we will see the brewery continue and we can add more somewhere down the line. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So yeah, go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I review beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the American playlist along with a number of other things. That's been added to quite regularly, of course, because we get a good selection of American beers here in Hong Kong, thankfully. And make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things in there as well. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about the wonderful Cascade Brewing once again. So, Cascade Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are from Oregon in the Pacific Northwest over in the US, and this brewery's been around a wee while. They opened back in December of 1998 in the southwestern part of Portland. And Portland is, of course, a bit of a beer mecca, as I've told you before. I think until recently, or until some point quite recently, they had the highest number of breweries of any city in the US, but I think Chicago is actually beating them these days. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure about that, but both very good beer cities. But the company was founded by Art Lawrence, who is one of the kind of godfathers, or maybe the godfather of the Oregon beer scene, and a huge figure in the industry, and he co-founded one of the first microbreweries and also the Oregon Brewers Festival, as well as having been instrumental in having the laws changed in the state so that brew pubs could exist, breweries could sell their beer on premises, and apparently this had been banned since the Prohibition era, which, if I'm not mistaken, was the 1920s in the US. But apparently Art had started homebrewing back in the 1970s, and then later in 1986 he and Fred Eckhart opened Portland Brewing Company, and he would remain with this company until 1994. Fast forward 4 years, he founded the Raccoon Lodge and Bar and then Cascade Brewing Company. And in the early years, these guys were making more kind of sessionable beers that could be sold in pubs. They called them just pub ales basically. And then later in 2006, Art, along with brewmaster Ron Gansberg, began to experiment with wild yeasts, aging and blending, and it was this that led to the development of the Northwest Sour Ales, or Pacific Northwest Sours, I think they've also become known as well. And this is a whole different category of wild ale actually. But he, this is where the brewery really started to make their name. It was a complete change of direction because there was a lot of competition at the time for these kind of pub ales and session beers and things, but Cascade decided to go in the completely opposite direction almost and do something really unusual. But just prior to the announcement about ceasing operations, the brewery had over 1,500 barrels of beer aging away at any one time. They've got 9 fodders, which are giant 1,800 American gallons or 6,800 litre barrels that are used for aging the beer. They've got 4 locations, which is the brewhouse production facility, the blending house, the brewing house and the lodge. But the brewhouse apparently has a capacity of 3,200 barrels or 520,000 litres of beer per year, but this can be extended up to 5,000 US barrels, which is about 800,000 litres of beer per year. But in May 2024, Art Lawrence sadly died, and then a month later it was announced that the company would cease operations. It had apparently been agreed back in 2020 that Cascade would sell to a group of owners that included those behind Flyboy Brewery, and they were big sour beer enthusiasts. But Art's daughter said that this had never been fully concluded, and apparently she was unaware that Art still owned the controlling stake of Cascade Brewing. And so when he died, this ownership passed to his family, to a family trust upon his death, and they apparently couldn't financially support the company. So unfortunately, they had to take the decision to cease operations. The other issue they had was that the liquor license expires 10 days after his death, and so that is one of the reasons why the future of Cascade Brewing really is uncertain. But it would be a real shame for these guys to kind of, die off completely because of how pioneering they've been in the craft beer scene. But yeah, that is the basic in and out of what has happened at Cascade recently. And as I say, a real pioneer of the American craft beer scene. So hopefully maybe one of the other sour beer breweries will come in and take them and keep them going and things like that too. That would be a real shame for these guys to just disappear, because there are too many craft breweries disappearing at the moment across the world. But yeah, that's everything I can really tell you about Cascade Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. I'll put the link to the Facebook and the Instagram there as well, because those probably will stay active even if the domain name of the brewery and things disappears. But yeah, go and check those out, and you can learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done on the Untappd, Beer Advocate and Rate Beer pages. But yeah, let's go on and actually have a little look at the beer itself then. So I'll just let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open up. You'll find a number of Cascade Brewing's beers have this style of art. There are a few other ones that have a little bit more of a kind of old school style artwork as well. But yeah, the Sang project, there are quite a few different beers in these ones, and I think the Sangs pretty much are always red ales. But there is the regular Sang, there's the Sang Royale and the Sang Noir, which is the cherry one. You'll see that reviewed on the channel a little bit later. But like I said, this one comes in at 9.4% ABV. This one fits into the Pacific Northwest or Northwest Sour Ale category. Tells you a little bit about the beer on the back as well here, so I'll just read that to you. So it says, Sang Royal is a blend of double red ales or imperial red ales aged in oak barrels and fodders for up to 22 months with Pinot Noir grapes from Oregon's famed Willamette Valley wine region. The most regal in our series of Sang projects, Sang Royal captures complex notes of summery berry fruit, plum, oak and spice with a vibrant acidity and soft tannic structure. But yeah, it looks kind of nice. One thing I noticed about this, on the back, you can see that Cascade Brewing is a registered trademark, and also House of Sour has been registered as well. I was getting a bit of a smile about that because, you know, in America, yeah, you really have to register everything because, you know, it's not unheard of for, you know, more general terms to just be trademarked by someone so they can make, you know, another little company will come along and use it, and people can make money off that by legal suits and all of this. So yeah, I got a little bit of a smile when I saw that House of Sour was a registered trademark and things. But yeah, these guys of course were the pioneers of the sour beer category in America almost, so it makes sense that they have that. But like I said, this one at 9.4% ABV, 2016 vintage, Sang Royal, Imperial Sour Red Ale, or Red Imperial Sour Ale, whatever we're going to call it, with Pinot Noir grapes. Let's get this guy out into the glass and see how we go. There you can see the Cascade top on this one. I think I'll need to keep one of these just in case the brewery does die. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and we'll see. Oh, that just snapped right off. Look at that. Didn't expect that. That came off easy enough. So let's do the cork then. There we go. Nice little bit of smoke on the opening there. There you can see your Cascade Brewing cork, and that's also on the top there. That's cool. But yeah, let's get this beer out and see what we have. Oh, that's a lot darker than I thought it was going to be. Interesting. There we go. So you can see this beer's poured with not much head on it at all, but I mean, it's from 2016, so at the time of filming it's about 8 years old actually, which is very, very interesting. It does say on the side here to serve at 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which I had to Google this beforehand because Fahrenheit, I don't know why Americans have to measure things with such weird scales. Just use Celsius like everybody else does. But yeah, it's you're supposed to serve this one at 4 degrees Celsius apparently, and it was chilled in the fridge for quite a wee while before we opened this one up. But yeah, I'm surprised at how dark the colour of this beer is actually. I mean, you know, Pinot Noir grapes are dark, but I wasn't expecting something that looks like a really long boil barley wine, I have to say. So yeah, you can see the colour of this beer. If we bring it up to the light, it is almost like a kind of red winey colour. It's maybe about the same colour as the glass of the bottle there. That's really interesting. So if we shine the light through it, it does have a little bit more of a kind of reddish tinge to it. But yeah, remember the colour of your beer depends on a few different things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker coloured beer. Any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour too. And when it comes to, you know, wild ale sour beers like this, those two last factors do play quite a big role. So yeah, a lot of the colour, this kind of darker colour that you're getting in this one, you can see a lot of that will be coming from the grapes, I would say, because Pinot Noir grapes are very, very dark. But yeah, the malty character in this one, the fact that it's an Imperial Red Ale, you can see that influence coming through there. So the red side of this one will be coming from the actual malts and stuff like that. But yeah, as you can see, there wasn't a lot of head to this one. With this beer being higher in ABV and being a sour beer, that's kind of to be expected too. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass there, a few little ones going up the side toward the surface, so you have got a little touch of like foam around the very edge of the glass there. But all in all, yeah, a little good bit darker than I expected, but it kind of makes sense when you consider the grapes that are in it and the fact that it's an Imperial Red Ale in the base. So yeah, I don't think we need to say much more about the appearance of this one. Let's go on and have a wee look at the aroma. I was going to say, this smells really, really nice. It's got a real, I think we're going to get a lot more complexity out of the flavour of this one than we are with the aroma, of course. But yeah, the aroma of this beer is absolutely lovely. You can smell that lovely American oak in the backbone here. And as I've said before, you know, the American oak tree is a different species to the European oak. European oak, I think, is a little bit drier and has a very slight touch of spice to it, whereas American oak, I've always found, is very, very smooth and gives you a lot more vanilla. So yeah, for me, the vanilla quality that you get out of this one is you've got this lovely smooth oak and that wee bit of vanilla in the background. But yeah, the aroma of this beer is actually just, it is very, very nice. So for me, that having that big backbone in there is just absolutely great. The beer itself is kind of interesting. The aroma for me with this beer is quite mild in a sense, like it's quite what's the word I'm looking for? It's quite reserved, I guess you could say. Pardon the pun with this being a sour beer, of course. But yeah, the lovely smooth oaky notes in the backbone, quite a little bit of vanilla, as I say, and then above that you do start to get the notes of the kind of the wine, the grape and the bread and all of this sort of stuff. So there's a wee bit of like a wholemeal brown bready character in this one, a sweet brown bread as well, but very, very smooth. I would add that, very, very smooth. You get the kind of big leathery notes that you expect as well. Very smooth leather, actually, quite rich. So you get that big smooth leathery character in there. Good little bit of brown sugar, like the kind of more leathery brown sugars, a wee touch of like, you know, Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch in there. Maybe a teeny little hint of like biscuit, McVitie's digestive biscuit or something. Yeah, bit of, I'd say like an oily, dry caramel as well. But yeah, if you sugar the beer up a little bit, you start to get a wee bit more complexity out of it. You start to get a little bit of funky, spicy bready characters. Yeah, funky, spicy bread in there. Yeah, so funky, spicy bread. A little bit of a kind of funky, spicy bread in there. And then yeah, you have that, as I say, yeah, a little bit of a kind of funky, spicy bread in this one. And you get more of that as you sugar the beer up. And it's got a wee bit of a kind of cracker to it as well, which is really interesting. I think we're going to get a lot more out of the flavour of this one than we are from the aroma, to be honest with you. So I don't know if we really need to say too much more about it. But yeah, you can smell that lovely big leathery character, leathery brown sugar, Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch, bit of sweet caramel, bit of biscuit. Then yeah, when you sugar it up, you get a bit of this kind of crackery, spicy, slightly funky sort of thing. There is the remnant of a green component in this one, you know, with this beer having been barrel aged and then, fodder aged, whatever. And with it having been in the bottle for so long, a lot of the green component will have dropped out of this one, you know. You do have a little bit of earthiness in there, there's a wee bit of herbal character, and I'm getting a wee touch of grassiness out of this one as well. Those elements do kind of linger there, but you also have to remember with sour beers, there's a few things with hopping, you know. Back in the day in Belgium, what they would do is they would add older hops to the sour beers because they didn't want the bitterness of the hop to interfere with the actual sourness that you were getting from the yeast. And these days with modern sour beer breweries, if you add A lot of brewers will argue that if you add fruit into the beer as an adjunct, it's going to suppress the green component anyway, so there's no point in adding hops. I'm pretty sure with this one though, they will have added some hops, and it will be American hops, which are obviously higher in alpha acid. So this is very different from the Belgian side of things. But yeah, you can still get a little bit of the green component in this one. But let's look at the fruity side of the beer just to round off the aroma. Of course, you can smell the big oily Pinot Noir grapes. I'm finding the grapey character in this beer is actually a little bit dry. I do enjoy a good wine, but I'm nowhere near as yeah, I'm actually nowhere near as you know, I'm nowhere near as well rounded and knowledgeable about wine as I am about beer. But the Pinot Noir grape in this one strikes me as being like really quite dark, very kind of rich, almost like slightly earthy in a way. So you got that lovely big grapey character in this one. Underneath that, I'm getting a little bit of like a kind of figgy character, black currants, maybe some like daty notes as well, and like oily pear and stuff like this, which are all things that are quite commonly associated with sour beer. They say on the bottle here plum, and I can definitely see a bit of that going on in this beer too. But the aroma of this one is really, really interesting. The more that you smell of it, the more you start to get the kind of leathery, spicy, woody side of the beer showing its kind of colours, if you like. So yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think this is going to be really, really nice. So yeah, this one is the Sang Royal 2016 vintage, a 9.4% Imperial Red Ale, barrel aged and all this kind of stuff, with Oregon Willamette Valley Pinot Noir grapes. I think this is going to be awesome. So, as I say, sad to hear about what's been going on with the ownership and stuff of Cascade Brewing recently. But yeah, let's have a taste of this beer and see what it's all about. Slàinte, skål, cheers. And rest in peace, Art, of course. Ooh. That's pretty nice, I have to say. Very different to, you know, very, very different to what I've had from the European sour beer breweries and things. And that's why trying beers like this for me is really, really interesting. This kind of Pacific Northwest or Northwest sour style for me is just something that you just don't come across in Europe that often. I mean, we have had access to Cascade beers, but yeah, this one is really, you know, this type of sour beer for me is just kind of something I haven't really touched upon. So it's cool to be able to do videos like this where after 4,000 reviews, it's just something that's a little bit unknown. So yeah. But yeah, this one for me is quite interesting because the impact that you get out of this beer really is quite sharp. And I remember trying the blueberry from Cascade, and that was the blueberry one was quite was really quite special actually, because it was just, I just remember the impact that this beer had. It was like boom. And you get the same thing from this, and obviously a lot of you can feel the wood in the back end of this beer, the woodiness and the spice and all of this kind of stuff is more and more prominent. And I think that's the effect you get of aging many sour beers, is the the woodiness and the maltiness and stuff like that does come to the fore a little bit more, and you can feel that in this particular beer. This is really interesting. As I say, I don't really have a kind of point of reference to compare this beer as I do with many of the other things that I review, but I like this. So all that we can really do with this one is just describe the flavour a wee bit more. You know, when we do the cherry one, the Sang Noir, that will be quite interesting to try as well. But yeah, for me this is pretty interesting. So let's try and just break this beer down then and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So middle third of your palate, then you can feel the backbone is that lovely, smooth American oaky character. And it's got quite a bit of dryness to it, actually. I think that might well be to do with the fact that this beer is about 8 years old. So yeah, you've got that lovely kind of smooth oaky backbone in this one. But yeah, as you go further forward on that base of your tongue, you can feel there's a little touch of vanilla in there. And the vanilla, I think, does kind of linger into the aftertaste. You get more and more dryness out of it with this. But yeah, on top of that, you do start to get this kind of almost vinous layer. And of course, with all these fodders and things that the brewery have, you know, over time this wood will develop some kind of surface character, if you like. And yeah, so you can feel that it's almost the same as when you get the spirit layer in bourbon barrel aging and things like that. So you can feel above the woody layer on your tongue, there's a little bit of a quite vinous kind of character coming out of this one, just that citricy, vinous type quality, which I think that's very, very interesting. But yeah, feel that citricy, almost white wine, vinous-y character sitting on top of the wood, and then you start to get the malty side of the beer coming out. So for me, and with this being a red ale, an imperial red, there's definitely a little bit of a kind of like wholemeal, brown bready bread crust in there. So yeah, there's definitely a little bit of that, the wholemeal, brown bready bread crust in there. Above that, yeah, you start to get that wholemeal, brown bready character in there. It's quite a sweet brown bread, of course, and I've talked about the difference between American malts and European malts and things like that. The American two-rows always have this slightly sweeter character to them. But yeah, above the wholemeal brown bread, you have this, you can start to feel some of the brown sugars. So for me, there's a little bit of, yeah, for me, there's a little bit of a, I would say, you get a little bit of like a toasty brown sugar, toasty caramel in the base. Then above that, you can feel there's a more kind of leathery brown sugary layer. Yeah, there's a more kind of leathery brown sugary layer in there, but in the dead center of the palate, you can definitely pick up a little touch of like straight up sweet caramel in there, and that of course is going to be the alcohol of this beer. This is 9.4% ABV, so this is quite a strong sour beer, this one. So yeah, toasty brown sugars, the more leathery kind of thing, and then yeah, you've got the straight up sweet caramel in the middle of the palate. You can feel there's a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity type quality to this one as well. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together, I think, is really quite interesting. Is there anything more we can say about the middle third of the palate in this one? I'd say maybe just a little touch of almost nutty character coming out into the aftertaste. But yeah, I think we've covered that middle third of the palate then. So yeah, it's interesting with this one. I actually find this beer, it really, with the American sour beers as opposed to the Belgian ones, you know, the Belgian ones really lean more toward the kind of woody, you know, the woody complexities and things like that, whereas I think the American ones, the sharpness of the sour side of things really makes them lean. You know, you just get more impact flavour out of these. So yeah, that's just an observation I've made from having tried one or two of these beers. But yeah, let's go to the back third of your palate. As I've often said, sweeter flavours will come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours will come out further back. And between middle and back third of your palate, you're always going to get similar flavours, just at different intensities. But yeah, border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of bready build up in there. You can feel the brown bread in the base, and that spreads up quite a little bit. And you do get a maybe more white bready character further up and a wee bit of bread crust. But yeah, base of the back third of your palate, you can feel the woody character in there, which does feel even drier and even kind of lighter, even more kind of I would say, spicier if you like. Then you've got that vinous kind of citricy layer that I was talking about, which is obviously just from the character of the wood. Then yeah, you've got the bread crusty notes in there, which are quite, they do feel a little bit dry, but then yeah, you've got that nice, tall, light, airy, wholemeal brown bready character coming out of this one. And then above, you can feel some of the toastier brown sugars just creeping over the top of that. And then you've got the yeasty character in the top of that back third of the palate there. So yeah. But yeah, I'm still getting used to how sour this beer actually is. Even after 8 years in the bottle, it still has quite a punch on the impact. But yeah, the yeasty side of the beer at the back of the palate, it's kind of interesting. It's got a little bit of a wholemeal brown bread in the middle, a bit of a kind of drier bread around the edge, and there, kind of bread crusty sort of thing. The yeasty character at the back third of the palate is actually quite mild in this beer. I think the thing that really lingers with this one is the kind of the big sharp sourness around the edges of the palate there. So yeah, you do get a little bit of yeastiness in the back of the front third of your palate. But yeah, the way all of that goes together, I think, is really quite interesting. So yeah, you can feel the flavour on the back third of your palate. It is definitely taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together a little bit more. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together is quite interesting. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things, then, like I said, you do get a bit of green component to this beer, even though it's, you know, barrel aged in the first place and then it's been in the bottle for 8 years, but you still get a little bit of it. So yeah, back corners of the palate, you do get a nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, it's got a little bit of herbal quality, and then as you push further forward from that, it gives you a little touch of floral character, then some nice kind of smooth grassiness around the front curve of the tongue. But let's focus on the front third of your palate and the more kind of fruity side of the beer. So yeah, let's look at that. Yeah, this is good. I like this. I find this is you have to just let your palate adjust to these beers a little bit so you can fully get what's going on with them. But yeah, the backbone of this beer, or the base of the front third of your palate, this one, you can feel the wood is showing you its smoother side at the front third of your palate. You get the vinous layer in there, and you're getting quite a little bit of vanilla out of it too. But yeah, the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, yeah, it's kind of, you've got the brown bread in the base and almost like a little bit of white bready character on top of that, then just a wee bit of bread crust. And as I say, lovely smooth oak in there with a bit of vanilla to it, the vinousy layer, the brown bready bread crust, and then a light smooth brown bread, and just a wee bit of a kind of slight brown sugary quality coming out of this one too. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together in this particular beer, I think, is really, really interesting. But on top of that, of course, you've got the fruity side of the beer. You've got that nice oily bubble where the fruity, juicy esters roll their way out of the beer from the hops, and of course you've got the Pinot Noir grapes that have been, I think they've been, I'm guessing they'll have been macerated and then added in to the barrels at some stage. So yeah, the with this one then, from the hoppy side of the beer, if you go to the back of that front third of your palate and that part of the oily bubble, you do get a little bit of like plum. You do definitely get a little bit of plum, like they say. Yeah, you do. It's more of a prune, to be honest with you. Dried plums, it's more like that. Reminds me a wee bit of the Japanese ume plums. So you do get a little bit of that. As you come further forward, there's a bit of sultana, you know, dry white green grapes, some oily pear in there as well. Maybe a little hint of like a fresh kind of slightly fresh green apple or something on the hoppy side too. But of course, the Pinot Noir grapes are sitting on top of this one, and that's where the kind of acidity and the sharpness and stuff in this beer is coming. And you have to remember that whenever you add fruit into beer as an adjunct, it's always going to suppress a bit of the green component, so you can feel the kind of the sharper I do think it's macerated grapes. You do get that kind of quality out of this one. You can feel that around the edge of your palate there, and that's giving you that wee bit of sharpness into the aftertaste. So yeah, you've got this nice kind of dark, smooth, slightly earthy, grapey character out of this one. I don't know if earthy is the right way to describe Pinot Noir grapes, but from what I gather, from what I can remember of Pinot Noir 9s, they're quite oily. They've got that little bit of earthiness to them, but you do get that kind of smooth sweetness out of them into the aftertaste too, and you can definitely detect that within the kind of citricy character on the edge of your palate too. So yeah, really interesting how this beer pieces together in that particular respect. So yeah, you've got all those oily fruity characters in there, then the sour side of it sitting underneath. Really interesting stuff, very, very interesting stuff, this one, I have to say. And I think at that we've covered everything we need to say about the flavour. But yeah, really dry, woody, leathery beer, this one. But the sharp impact of this, I think, is the kind of trademark thing that you should expect of a Pacific Northwest sour. Obviously people will watch this video who have far more knowledge of this style than me, so I'd be curious to hear your take about that in the comment section below. But yeah, for me this is a really interesting experience because I'm not overly familiar with this particular style category or subcategory, whatever we're going to call it, but I do like the beer, and that's the main thing. So yeah, let's round off the review then with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. So yeah, I do find that it takes a wee bit of time for my palate to adjust to this one. It's a lot easier for me, I think, to take a lambic than it is to take one of these, because the lambics are just a bit smoother. But this beer, it's interesting for me because these feel a little bit lighter in their mouthfeel almost than the lambics and the Flanders Reds and stuff like this. It comes across this beer, I would say, kind of about mid-bodied almost. I find the sour beers tend to be a bit lighter than the regular beers anyway. But yeah, for me, this beer is kind of mid-bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth. It does have a degree of slickness to it, but like I say, there's a bit of cleanliness to this one. There's a little bit of cleanliness to this beer too, which is interesting. Must be maybe indicative of the Oregon water quality or whatever. But yeah, the dryness that you get out of this one kind of lingers into the aftertaste. Like I say, you've got a lovely smooth wood, and I think the wood starts to show you that it's kind of sweeter, more vanilla side the further into the aftertaste that you go. So you've got that lingering dryness in there. You've got a wee bit of citricy character, obviously, from the wood barrel. You've got the nice malty side of things, wee bit of toasty, sweet, dry brown sugar that comes out into the aftertaste as well. The little bit of hoppy character. I mean, the IBU count of this beer will be very, very low, like 5 to 10 at most, actually. Then yeah, the fruity impact with this one, the sour impact that you get from these Pacific Northwest sours is like boom. That will really get you with this one. So that comes in sharp, but the beer mellows out really nicely. And as I've often said, for me, a good sour beer is one that that does mellow out very, very nicely, and this beer does that actually. But you still have a bigger sharpness to this one than you'll get from the Belgian lambics and things like that too. But yeah, all in all, a very, very interesting beer, this one. As I say, I don't have such a big kind of point of reference to compare this beer to others, but I think this is very nice. I love grape and plum sours, and this one certainly hasn't disappointed. And you know, knowing the reputation of this brewery, I wouldn't have expected it to. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was the Sang Royal, keep doing that, 2016 vintage, a 9.4% Pacific Northwest sour, Imperial Red Ale on the base, with Oregon Pinot Noir grapes added into it. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This has been really interesting to try, and this is the first of 4 Cascade beers that you'll see reviewed on the channel over the next wee while. So thank you for watching. Check out my social media. Check out Cascade's Brewing social media as well. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. And I'll see you guys again in another review very, very shortly. Slàinte, skål, and cheers. Ciao just now.